And I'd like to introduce Lindsay Draper, who will introduce Audrey Bauman.
This is a full house. Look, this is amazing. I'm so thrilled to see you all. It is my distinct pleasure and privilege to introduce Audrey Bauman. Audrey Bauman's work is characterized by the uncanny, that unsettling doubleness that installs in one a feeling of being in comfortable, familiar territory, while also engaging in the dread of the as yet unknown. That affective mode of simultaneous captivation and enchantment, as well as disease and distress, is a central pillar of much of Audrey's work. This is the case in her story, The River, wherein a young woman is seduced by a once-living apparition who resides in the local stream. The water ghost asks you, the protagonist, for a series of increasingly complex offerings until the final gift becomes the protagonist herself. Or The Nightingale, wherein the crew of a space vessel returning to a now abandoned Earth manages their nostalgia and dread at that homecoming. Their emotions distract them from the fact that before the story began, a younger member of their crew crashed the vessel, and no one yet understands the severity of the damage. The story then is propelled by the ever-increasing possibility that their ship may be racing both toward Earth and their own cataclysm. It is this sense of uncanniness paired with irony, being drawn to a ghost whose desire is so palpable and profound it causes one to sacrifice their life and become a ghost themselves, or undertaking a long journey to a home planet only to be threatened by the self-inflicted demise just as Earth becomes visible on the horizon, that structures the conflicts and tensions in Bauman's work and situates her firmly in the tradition of Kelly Link, Sophia Samatar, Samantha Schweblin, Yoko Ogawa, Shirley Jackson, and Angela Carter. In the 2023 Scowcroft winning story, chosen by Susan Daetsch, that uncanniness is made manifest in a site on the human body, a site of both desire and destruction, the human mouth. Malocclusion is the story of library page Greta's collapsing relationship with artist Charlie, the woman Greta clearly still has feelings for. But it is also the story of two parallel sub-conflicts, the seemingly sudden misalignment of Greta's teeth and the introduction of a simultaneously alluring and also antagonistic force represented in the text merely with two brackets and a blank space in between. I'm eager to hear how you're going to represent this. That absent presence, like the gap in Greta's bite or the spaces on the shelves of the library where books are missing, haunts the narrator and the reader alike, as both come to understand that Greta is losing herself to the typographically unnamed, and thus quite literally invisible force. But the surreal conflict of a bad bite is amplified when it starts to become clear to the reader, if not to Greta herself, how misaligned Greta and Charlie were from the beginning. With this slow revelation, the story's tension is elevated as it moves from a fable about a relationship full of gaps, figurative cavities between and within each lover, to a deeply unsettling, exquisitely designed portrait of psychological horror. Greta's failed bite has emerged in synchronicity with the disillusion of her relationship with Charlie, and the typographical absence is, ironically, the aperture Greta's psychology uses to fill in where Charlie once resided. As 2023 Scowcroft judge Susan Daetsch puts it, quote, "Malocclusion marks the undercover unraveling of what the narrator had thought was solid." In the end, it is not Greta or Charlie who is left haunted, but the reader. Quote, "You should really look at what's going on down here," Charlie tells Greta in a dream, while prying open Greta's jaws to see what lingers beyond her teeth. But how can Greta see down her own throat and further, into her own gut, into her own heart, into her own mind? The logistics of biology means Greta can't, but Bauman allows the reader to see, and what's going on down there is as disquieting as it is sad. Nestled among my teeth is an entrance, Bauman writes in the first line of Malocclusion. We should count ourselves lucky, if a little tentative, a little cautious, to be invited inside. It is without further ado that I give you the 2023 Scowcroft winner, Audrey Bauman.
Can you guys hear me? Awesome. If I've ever been in your class, you know that I either don't speak or I speak so quietly. So I am glad to hear that you can hear me. And thank you, Lindsay, so much for that beautiful introduction. I feel so overcome, so I'm gonna keep talking so I don't get too emotional. And thank you all for being here on a Thursday night in November. And I'm so honored to get to read to all of you, and also with Jess, who's one of my favorite poets. And I'm just so happy to be here. So thank you all for being here too. And without further ado, I will read Malocclusion to you. And there are indeed brackets with nothing inside of them. So to read those, I'm just going to be quiet for a little bit when they appear. So you have that to look forward to, I guess. All right. Malocclusion. Nestled among my teeth is an entrance. It is visible when I arrange the rows so the top and bottom two teeth align. Ordinarily, my teeth are offset, my lower jaw tilting rightward as if a wagon jolted off track. Malocclusion, WebMD calls it. A closure gone wrong, a bite that is bad. To find the gap, I slip my jaw into place, pull my lower teeth forward, and latch my incisors together. I run my tongue over my molars and press it through the emptiness between my cuspids. There's insufficient closure, a hole in my perimeter. Many other such holes exist. But this one should not. The downstairs occupants never shut the building's door. This could be because the unit below mine is a vacation rental, and the out-of-towners don't stay long enough to learn how the door barely fits the frame, how you have to turn the doorknob all the way in as you close it so the latch doesn't get caught. I know this about the out-of-towners, but it never ceases to annoy me. They do other annoying things too, like fill up the trash cans without taking them to the curb, smash bottles of Dos Equis in the parking lot, chatter into the early morning on the shared patio, and infuse the night air with the skunky scent of marijuana, a texture that serves to make the air thicker, even as it serves to remind me of how uncool I am. I choose to be annoyed about it rather than communicate my needs. At least that's what Charlie tells me. You could talk to them, she says, offer a discounted reading or something. People love tarot. The two of us curl up on separate edges of the futon. She drinks a can of the seltzer water from the case she left behind, the flavor of which I despise. I resent the fact I have to bribe them into being decent and tell her so. She twists a strand of neon red hair around her finger. Listen, Greta, once you accept the fact that our brains are rotted and our social niceties degraded, you could start working within reality, maybe even find peace. Then she asked me if I've called my parents back yet. I'm working within the reality that their social niceties are so degraded, once they open their mouths, I'll say something I'll regret, I tell her. She drops off a headless garden gnome before she leaves, adds it to the rows of mismatched ceramics we had begun collecting on the stoop. After I walk her to the front steps, I wrench the door closed behind her, hard enough to shake the bag of road salt spilling into the parking lot. My jaw aches from trying to force it into the correct position. On the door frame, you can see a mark where the latch has repeatedly dug into the wood. Failed attempts to yank it tight, the very mechanism resisting. I walk to the window where, in the bottom quarter of the pane, Charlie's car peels away. 2. The summer of my aching jaw is the summer of seeing. I see it soon after Charlie drops off the gnome, although truthfully, is less of a seeing and more of an encounter. I have laid out my clothes for the following day of work and placed the glass filled with water and shrinking ice cubes on my nightstand. Hair damp from the shower, I'm brushing my teeth, using my wrist to put extra force on the toothbrush when I experience the interruption. It's a pause that I cannot account for, a block that I can't get around. I do not tell Charlie about this or about my jaw, but I dream about her pulling my mouth open to an impossible size, sticking her face in deep. "You should really look at what's going on down here," she yells, her voice echoing in my esophagus. "When was the last time you saw a doctor? It looks pretty serious." The first thing I do when I discover my unmatched teeth is to click through old pictures where my smile is visible. I do this on the train to work, during lunch, and while I'm waiting for my soup to bubble up. I look for the incisor that is rotated so it sticks out, the canine that occasionally dips over my lip, and my jaw, always my jaw. I look to find the place where my chin is lopsided, not aligned beneath my nose. My entire adult life, my face is listed to my right and to an onlooker's left. It is listing in my driver's license photo, graduation photos, and the Polaroid from before she moved out of me and Charlie pinned to the wall above my desk. It is far from symmetrical. It is so far from symmetrical that I can't believe the fact has eluded me this long. Can't believe that the dentists omitted this from their assessments, where they pronounced my teeth quote-unquote exceptional, quote-unquote beautiful, and quote-unquote perfect. I wake up, ignore, examine my teeth for 5 minutes, feel my jaw pop from too much jostling, text Charlie, you up yet? Swallow coffee, check email, and check more email. I read tarot. I check the microwave clock that runs 7 minutes too slow, think, oh fuck. Shoes, glasses, bag, train card, out the door, slam it hard, knock the gnome over so it shatters, run to make the train, swerve a cyclist, dodge a car, bound through the sliding doors before they snap shut, close palms around the strap hanger, look out the window, watch buildings blur by until they transform into. Close eyes, breathe deep, wait for the intercom voice to announce that I've arrived at my destination. Disembark, shuffle through the crosswalk, trample white blocks of paint. Work looms ahead. I enter the sliding doors, listen for the thud they make as they slice open and shutter closed. I work in the public library downtown, where I slide books in and out of place, shelving the returns, pulling the holds, pushing rows of spines across floors and into elevators on ancient metal carts covered in peeling paint. My official job title is page. It is true that I polish the armor of the library, leave it gleaming, no cracks or defects for patrons to complain about. It is also true I spend much of my day whisper singing the alphabet song, reminding myself how W comes after V. 3 hours into a 6-hour shift, in the break room, I receive a call from my mother. I pick up. Greta, she says, thank God, I've been trying to reach you. I know, I tell her. I hold the phone between ear and shoulder and rummage through bags of chips and boxes of cracker sandwiches filled with processed cheese. The library sells snacks in the break room at a discount. There's a drop box where employees can insert dollar bills before making their selection. I force a crumpled one through the slot and grab a bag of Doritos. So why didn't you get back to us? She presses. You know you're about to be off our insurance in a couple months. Have you been looking at plans or jobs? Mom, I'm at work right now. I'm sorry, she says. I'm just nervous. You know I get nervous. I know. Are you still seeing that girl? She asks. Over the receiver, I hear crackling that halts before I can locate a source. More taunting me. The artist I worry about, we're hanging out, I tell her. We're friendly. She lives a couple blocks north now. That's all. Keep me updated, will you? She says. Maybe we should set up a weekly time to call. I don't like wondering whether or not you're okay. Why wouldn't I be okay? I say. Listen, my break is almost over. We'll talk more later. Greta, she says, but the line clicks dead. I toss the bag of Doritos, emptied, into the trash can, slide my phone into my pocket, and run upstairs to my cart, stacked with returns. 3. Charlie works in a ceramic studio across the street, where she creates mugs, statues, little plates and saucers, garden ornaments. She sells the good ones at the farmer's market and gives me the failures. Robots with missing arms, orange jack-o'-lanterns glazed with wax from candles past, lumpy flower pots that house my weathered stalks of lavender. When the out-of-towners are swinging around their beer bottles and draping bathing suits across the surfaces of the residence patio, occasionally they will knock down a misshapen robot or man-made seasonal gourd. In which case Charlie will sweep the shards up and leave them at the vacation rental door before replacing the fallen piece with a new addition. She used to stop by the library during my breaks. She hasn't been doing that anymore. Charlie and I met at an art fair outside the library, when the roads downtown were cordoned off for vendor stalls, food trucks, live music, picnic tables. I saw her hair first, then her table of wares, which appeared muted by comparison. What's that? I said, pointing to a statue sprouting multiple pairs of eyes, limbs, noses. She shrugged and said, who knows? Charlie's teeth conform to crisp lines, shaved smooth by some past orthodontist. I've stared at them when she speaks, checked for chips and overlapping in the lamplight when we hang out after working hours, but found only neat rows that disappear into gums, pale blocks of semi-translucent enamel. How many months ago did she leave now? When did she move up the hill? I can picture the weather from that day, sunny, hot, but I can't retrieve anything else. After work, Charlie comes over again, brings a bottle of cheap red. Why do you keep touching your face? She asks. No reason, I say. Behind her, exhales. I tell her pieces of my dream last night, how she was in it, but rather than pleased, she appears disappointed and worried. I don't think you should be doing this, she says to me, and we sip in silence while voices in the unit below shout sentences we cannot understand. 4. A bad bite is common to a quarter of the population, maybe more, the internet tells me. A bad bite often looks like an overbite. Your top teeth sit too far forward in your mouth. A person may also demonstrate an underbite, where the bottom teeth come forward, making the mouth difficult to close and making it difficult to chew. A bad bite in which the 2 rows of teeth are mismatched, in which the top 2 teeth do not necessarily correspond with the bottom 2 teeth, can result in gaps or teeth that don't rest firmly together. It can result in a misaligned jaw. It can lead to unnatural, abnormal wear patterns. It can encourage your teeth to move and to shift even further out of place. It is difficult for me to describe the experience of encountering, but I will do my best. It is not unlike searching for your keys in the place you always leave them and finding they're no longer there. Or it is very close to standing in front of your open refrigerator door, seeking something to eat, and yet seeing nothing among the many options. It is like walking into a forest, following a well-marked trail, and then emerging in a spot your map does not account for. You have to pause, retrace your steps, refer back to your map, try and find what went wrong, but nothing's gone wrong. There's simply a, and now you must decide what to do. You must decide how willing you are to proceed. You must decide if proceeding is possible, or if the presence of is simply too much to bear. Instead of falling asleep that night, I lay under the blankets, one leg hooked above to escape their warmth and the rest of me sweating beneath. And as I sweat, I watching me. I remember a time from before she moved when Charlie and I climbed on the building's roof so we didn't have to sit on the patio with the out-of-towners. One night we saw a raccoon up there, its eyes glowing under the new moon. One night Charlie, who slips her shoes off regardless of situational propriety, dropped her flimsy soled sneaker on the hood of my actual neighbor's Honda. The loud slap of it woke him up and set off the car alarm. We nearly rolled off the rooftop from laughing. And one night Charlie told me she could see haze gathering around me, blue-green haze, an aura. She was under the influence, I remember. We both were. The dark makes it clearer, she said, what's there and what's not. At the time, I thought she was stoned and totally screwy, but later I realized that in the dark, you're less distracted by the details. You can only count for the outlines of things. You can assess more easily whether or not you fit inside of something. That's what Charlie was doing at the time, testing her edges and discovering places she would not go. 5. My favorite part of my job is going through the lost book list. On a day when there's not enough to shelve, a librarian will send me to the stacks with a printout of all the books that are checked in but missing. I try to imagine the mistakes someone at my job can make. If I were to misplace Borges, where would he be? Among the Borgias in nonfiction? Above or below where he belongs on the shelf? Perhaps in the right spot on the shelf, but in the section for kids or teens. Or perhaps he has tumbled into the fissure between shelves, spine down, pages fanning out, and invisible to all but those who poke their heads in. Before I go to work the following day, stepping over wine stains on the carpet, I check my teeth, which still rise crooked from my gums, and I check my bite, which still crowds uneasily. I do my tarot reading. I awaken to 2 texts from my mother, asking if I received her packages and how the job hunt is going. I don't respond. Instead, I text Charlie to see if today she'll be at the studio or at the shop. Neither, she responds by noon. Running errands, don't wait on me. At work, the lost book list asks me to look for a mystery novel that's disappeared into the stacks for 2 years. The alarm sounds when a patron tries to exit with a book that hasn't been desensitized. I think about stopping by the studio and searching for glimpses of neon red hair. The train is late. Someone has spray painted the sliding doors into 2 rows of teeth that unzip vertically when the machine stops. The wrong train has come twice now, and I call a rideshare vehicle, and it takes me not to my house, but to an apartment I've visited only once before, a few blocks north of me, a new placemat growing moldy below the front door, and a toothy grin's jack-o'-lantern glowering inside one of its windows. When I see, I react not with reason, but with my body, my unreasonable body. It scans the emptiness of the and tries to comprehend it. What have I forgotten? What has gone wrong here? And among the things I do not consider is that the is benevolent, or that is logical, or that it is meant. 6. Fact. Arrived at the same time as my misplaced jaw. Replacing, perhaps, a gap in my vision that I could not recognize until the jaw filled it. When my jaw became lopsided, I myself was set straight. But the existence of would argue otherwise. If someone, perhaps myself, set me straight, then why has appeared? What to do with? Or something else could be. This is unexpected, Charlie says. To what do I owe the pleasure? She stands by the door as I pull my sneakers off. A candle flickers from the coffee table in her living room, one of the few items of furniture she picked up after she left. Too lazy to lug a couch up the stairs, even though I offered to help. She's transformed her floor into a nest of pillows, and a couple more lean lopsided against the wall opposite the TV. I wanted to see you, I tell her. I lay my jacket on a chair and move to stand next to her. Work was slow, and my mom's freaking out, and I don't have anything in my fridge right now. So I figured we could get Chinese and unwind, maybe turn on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I'm sorry I didn't text first. I ended up calling her right after work and came here kind of impulsively. I'm honestly impressed I remember the new address. The last time I came over, was it in July? I know I've got the futon, but we don't have to always hang out at my place. It's really okay. Greta, she says. Her hair is tied up now, a tidy circle like a period at the nape of her neck. I'm not sure if this was a good time. I was looking forward to spending a night in alone, you know, in my own space. Your own space, I falter. I'm sorry, I just thought. On a sunny afternoon, Charlie's telling me no. She's pulling her jean jacket on. She's saying things that I've only heard in truly terrible movies. It's not you, it's me, and I really wanted it to work out. Like it was something outside of us, something beyond our control. And I don't think we're a great fit for each other, and I still want to be friends, Greta, all right? And because I can only be agreeable, because I only know how to fall in line, the words I offer up to Charlie over and over are, okay, okay, okay. 7. Eight. I am, somehow, home again at my apartment. I appear here quietly, mysteriously, gaping holes populating my journey from Charlie's new place to my bathroom. I'm in my bathroom and standing in front of my mirror, and my mouth is open as wide as it can go. I'm cataloging my teeth again. I'm looking at where the edges are rough, worn down from chewing. I am biting down, chewing, even though there's nothing there. I force my jaw into place. The bite is unnatural, not set right, the edges too close together. The grooves of my teeth won't fit, aren't a good fit. The front, middle, incisor jumps outward as if trying to run away. My jaw aches from holding my mouth open, aches from me straightening it out, wants to pop and rub where it shouldn't, won't stop tilting, won't stop shifting, even as I slide it open, wider, closer to the mirror, staring down my own throat, where my teeth are glittering blankly, crowns pointed, tracing a shape into which I can watch myself disappear. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. That was wonderful. No surprise there. In a moment, I'm going to be before your eyes turning into Paisley Reptile. It will be a neat trick, I tell you. But before I do that, I would like to congratulate Audrey, congratulate Jess on my own behalf, and also to marvel at the wonderfully, cheerfully full room, to thank you all for coming, and to thank the Art Barn, of course, and then perhaps especially, again, to thank Working Dog for trading the reading with us tonight, and to remind you all that there will be a Working Dog reading on the 1st of December, and another one on December 16th, when I know none of you will be occupied with any, annoying holiday tasks, and will very, very much prefer to be here to hear our graduate students. It's really, so now I'm Paisley, you saw that happen, and she says, it is my honor to introduce, or to have Kate introduce for me, Jess Tanck, the winner of this year's Levis Prize for Poetry. I know from working as Jess's committee chair that the topic of extreme environments is foremost on her mind. And Jess's timely new collection, Winter Here, which is it Georgia that's bringing it out? Which just was accepted by the University of Georgia Press, subtly but powerfully explores a range of such environments. Of course, with climate change awareness newly, or at least more profoundly, thrust upon us all, one could say each of us has been re-evaluating what constitutes an environment in crisis. As coastlines rise and aquifers dry out, as fire devours California towns and Canadian wildfire smoke blankets New York City, every place represents a mortal risk. And as air and water and forest acreage cross human-made borders, every environment bears the costs of other natural and social catastrophes too. We think in nations, but we live in nature, which means that we too are finally, if quietly, contaminated, both by the hopes and acts of other people. Extreme environments then don't just affect us physically, they change us psychologically, and in that the natural shares much with the domestic, the sexual, the social. Imagination, memory, and dreams too are domains of desire, fear, or anxiety. They too are places in which, as the child narrator in Jessica's poem So Below believes, one can walk through fire. Or perhaps one might populate the sea with fantastic monsters. And when a parent is ill or dying, when a parent cannot show a child the normal displays of affection and love, the house itself becomes both strange and estranging. The parents' moods read like weather as children float through the kitchen and coffee roils a storm through its purring machine. At times, Jess's poems read like Gothic tales or ghost stories, and the poems are haunted by memory, but also inevitably by the ways we repeat the lessons and actions of our parents, despite our best attempts to do otherwise. To be embodied is to repeat the past, Jess declares, and the narrators in this collection return again and again to childhood stories and wounds, to visions of an adult life that seem to a child like a tumultuous foreign country. These are poems that are constantly aware of our capacity for violence, the violence we do to ourselves, to each other, the violence that is memory itself, which comes to us unbidden with secret fears and unrealized dreams. Even our most tender acts, whether we're making art or offering someone consolation, come laced with threat. A mother kisses her children's foreheads before shutting them into a closet. Or a teacher plays the cello beautifully, which leaves a welt on her throat, the result of how close she held the carved thing to tear the music out. Learning, in fact, is often attached to pain. We tend to know only the names of what is broken, Jess writes. And if this aphorism sounds cynical, it also comes with an important corollary. How better to love each other, Jess adds, than when we tend to each other's wounds. It's a painful paradox to admit. Our shared injuries pull us apart and also bring us together. And perhaps we can only know some people and ourselves in relation to those people through their own particular wounds that correspond with our own. In any case, Jess's poems remind me that the most extreme environment we can imagine is love, in which we are both victim and aggressor, healer and sufferer, parent and child, ghost and body, where desire itself is, as Jess writes, inconsolable. And yet we cannot help giving and taking it, no matter how much our desires hurt. I am giving you a gift, Jess writes. I do not know how to take it back. Jess is the author of Winter Time, winner of the Georgia Poetry Prize. Her work has appeared in or is forthcoming from Alaska Quarterly Review, Beloit Poetry Journal, Colorado Review, Diagram, Gulf Coast, and the Kenyon Review, among others. Please join us in congratulating and welcoming Jess Tanck.
Talk about an extreme environment. You know, it's humbling in the best way to be in this program any day, but especially today. I'm really grateful you're all here. Thanks for being here. Following that, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Kate. Thank you so much, Paisley. Wow, I'm simply overcome, and thanks so much to Sadie and Aaron for all your hard work, especially with the difficulty of schedules. It's a constant balancing act in a program like this, and I'm just so delighted to look out at this full house of so many beloved faces, and also to be reading with one of my favorite writers who is a poet as well as a fiction writer. I hesitate to tell you, and a piece is great when you're sitting there and thinking, I can't wait to teach this piece. Some of my students are back there like, oh yeah, we know, thanks for being here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Are we ready? All right. So I'm more or less going to take you on a journey through my forthcoming debut collection with a couple of new spices added in. Great. So below. I can walk through fire, I told my mother, drunk on the glow of sparklers, on sand cooling in the sunset. I might have been 5 or 6 years old, inflated with the recklessness and certainty that come from living in one's imagination. Architect of sandcastles, tender of flame, I paraded the beach in orange swimsuit and water shoes, ready for thrill. There was everything here. Fire and the great water breathing, moving, cold, that stretched all the way to the horizon. And I felt it, that bigness. Pictured the sand crumbling into cakes of earth below and rock below us, how deep the world stretched on every side. My sister and I, sparklers in hands, zagged into evening like fireflies or bats, weightless, moved by joy. And my grandparents were inside, and my mother and father here on the beach. And what wasn't protecting me, what wasn't stretching above, what didn't comfort me in my smallness. I can walk through fire, I told her, and believed it. Stood at the threshold of glow, having never felt the suck and sear of it, having never nursed a burnt knuckle under cold water or whimpered for relief from a tongue of flame beneath my skin. I can walk through fire, I said, and my mother sat still in her seat. Eyes locked in the flames, she said, "No, you can't." Didn't even look up. Did not look at me. Damned if. When we left the room, still locked in character by tartan jumpers and the beetle wings of our Mary Janes, My sister said the people had been creepy. Inside, we joined a circle of clammy hands while strangers rocked and shuddered, babbled in tongues. In the rearview mirror, my father's eyes hovered. This, he said, was God's native tongue, the language we needed to get help. But I didn't feel God in that room. Instead, stir-fried syllables, unfamiliar touch, voices untangled from sense, soaking me in a burning spring. It was a kind of pleasure. Mind drowsy, eyes vague at the blackboard, the slate of night-hanging velvet down the windows. Like a crown of light, this fervor was almost enough to make you believe in it, a show of force. Ocean smashing up under an edifice of rock. Absent of meaning, the boom and crash of it was still enough to shake me, pin me on my back at night, expecting the floor to open into some deep dark below. Eating flamin' hot Cheetos at Mom's grave. Yeah. Bathos, baby. Scarlet, feathered, orange, neon yellow. The flames on the bag make burning look fun. It's hard to tell if Chester's overcome by the fire. His shades hide his eyes, his smile a kind of jawless flame gasp, perpetual. The tree above drips ice on my shoulder, weepier than me. Kicked out again, I wear my goth sensibility like a wool coat. I can just feel the snow through my jeans, the cold and epic poem, a thing I live in. World still unlit, no phone or laptop. This is my place to go. Me and Mom and her stone. Loving mother and wife. The etchings full of grit, dirt packed. I crunch a Cheeto, mull its salty pulp. I'm not sure about these terms. My hand red raw, I crumble it back in the bag, warm it, fish for more. I can't picture her face anymore, just a specter, back turned. Linen rot and lilies. Her angry intellect clutched like a blade she couldn't swing without slicing open her own palms. Bag empty, I suck the red from my fingers, plunge a hand in the pocket of my coat. When I asked if she was dying, she cried, shook her head no. I tried, is what I tell myself. I wonder if she'd agree, what she'd have scrawled if she'd left a note. The snowy hills and their gray tangle of trees don't say a word. Kneeling in the dim, winter stretches on, unmovable, pristine. Pen out, I scrape the etching clean. The next poem's called Samson and Delilah, Opus 47, which, if you don't know, it's a piece from an opera, which we would affectionately call in orchestra when we would play it, the Bacchanal, which is essentially a drunken, sexually charged party. This is a sonnet, if anyone cares to know. Especially my committee members. It's a sonnet. Okay. I would wonder over it often, the welt on my teacher's throat. My hand cupped round the neck of my cello, hollow I hugged to me. So thin, the music stand, so thin what kept the din of strings from the electric weather of my blood. In profile, my teacher's tucked hair, frown, perpetual bruise. Horsehair on metal, purr torn from a gate, thrown open, and to what? Only when she lifted her violin to play would I understand the mark. How close she held the carved thing to tear its music out. This is the one and only Salt Lake City poem in the entire bunch, so it's one of my favorite places in the city. Mount Olivet Cemetery. A wound in the flesh of reality, you'd call it. Under the white teeth of mountains, rusted chain link borders 6 lanes of traffic, a stadium that leers down at the dead. I miss your acid and quiet, see the fence choked with vines, and want you here with me, watching the mange-eaten mule deer touch noses, piss on graves. Pines, red cedar, and spruce shade violets, nesting geese. The other trees read as blanks, echoing with magpies' sawing cries. Back home, you could name them all. Every creature, rock and thorn. Angel, the deer here flee too easily. Step with caution. Not even one bristles with velvet, a crown. What we keep. We've always had some form of shelter, safety, good boots, fat Macintosh apples from my grandparents, the angel I'd imagine folded round me while I slept, white dunes, sugar melting the strawberries jeweled mass to jam. Most years of my childhood, there was a cafeteria with rectangle pizza and the roar of talk as interlude between silences, a friend's voice crackling through the plastic landline. Distant, but real. There has always been a school, the smell of pencils and dusty hallways, a teacher sitting with me under the fluorescent lights, and after, always a Perkins or Denny's, a friend's room piled high with blankets, rain in the streetlight from the warm cabin of a parked car. I have fled to affection in every form I can get it. Heart emoji or hand cupped to my knee, the whiskered attention of my cats who see only what's in the room. But even now, every time you touch me, I hope I'm somehow becoming less myself, as if you might draw me out like water from a lung. Leave the ghost, start new. Just for perspective, we're entering the last section of the book here with this poem, which I gotta call out to my fellow Wisconsinites in the audience. It's that time of year where you really start to miss Wisconsin. I'm going back soon. I love Utah, but listen. This poem is called Ode to Wisconsin. Come home, beloved, to precipice and shadow, to tangled woods flying past, to wind that stirs the spirits in these carved hills, makes dance the Northwoods evergreens, rustles them in gust. Your loneliness is no pathology. How else to feel with the sky hung so close, the heavens peeled raw? How else could you take the open sky, the dark save for the cold, pockmarked moon, gauzed in clouds, the shards of northern lights? This place, halfway between earth and the stars, past pastures and rotted barns, wood smoke and taverns, fens where even the devil cries himself to sleep. Dead leaves steeped in amber water, the damp firebrand of fall. And always the lakes, designed to draw the eye and lure us silent to their cold and depth, the force of their white caps. Soften our voices, curl our vowels along the tongue. Oh, the brilliance of a bonfire against vast night. Oh, the warmth of a garage, balm of lamplight after the drive. Salt-bleached tires, your hands white-knuckling the wheel as your eyes comb shadows for whitetails who wait to charge the chapel of a midnight road. So this next poem is called Erebus and Terror, And for those of you who haven't been subjected to my extreme environments, poems, and workshops, what you need to know is that Erebus and Terror are the name of 2 ships. They were the ships that were lost along with all hands in Sir Captain John Franklin's failed quest to discover the Northwest Passage. And Erebus is, it means the darkness at the entrance to the underworld. Erebus and Terror. On the phone the night before his surgery, I tried to explain to my grandfather my obsession with the Arctic, Franklin's failed expedition. 5 months without sunrise, the compass swimming circles. Night after night, frozen in the groan of ice against both ships, hungry and climbing. Like most things worth fearing, it was invisible, the danger, at least to their eyes. Ineffable, my grandfather says, when I struggle to explain the great white nothing, how it feels so close. Attach the raw air back home. Something you can't put to words, he says, and I argue that's why I need to try. Are you okay? He'd asked minutes earlier when I went quiet at his description of how they'll scrape the cancer out tomorrow, run the tests. Silence. Sacred punctuation that catches what's true in its hollows, in the expanse between our ever softer repetitions of I love you and good night. This next poem is the titular poem in my book that's coming out next year. It's called Winter Here. Winter here is inseparable from my hand in your pocket, wind down the collar at my throat. The cement streets, basted in salt, rasp against my boots. November opens like a knife, and I can't stop waiting to hear your footsteps on the stairs, to see your shadow through the frosted glass. The first night you sent me a poem, Chicago froze solid. Blood in the Merlot, the way I bit my lip. Season of evening, season of fairy lights, pomegranates, wool, and ice. I spent weeks suspended across state lines with you, our messages of fervor as the temperature dropped to 20, 40 below. Look at how cold, I said. Sent a photo of my bedroom window turned meat freezer, the metal frame feathered with the frost. I'd been thrown from a draft horse on Christmas Eve and texted you pictures of the bruises as they darkened, arranged myself shivering in flannel, in candlelight, a smirk and black lace. It was snowing when you finally arrived at my door. I could never believe it. How my hands shook, pulse raised, mind gone black and blue. How I undressed in uncertainty, almost afraid to look at you. Remind me how lucky I was to wait and fear in the freezing quiet, the snow-sunk city. Tell me, what is reverence but terror, really? Wondering what the cold hands you've anointed with your mouth will do. This next poem is the final poem of my book, and what you need to know is that it is for and about one of my favorite Russian poets, Benedikt Erofeev. I forced many people in Montana this year to watch Moscow to Patushki, the documentary about him, and those of you who did not watch it still heard it thunderous over the speakers in the shared space, so if you know, you know. And I hope I can lead some to this amazing 40-minute documentary as well. There is an epigraph to this poem that comes from the English translation of his epic poem. It's called Moscow to the End of the Line. The epigraph reads, I know that world sorrow is not a fiction perpetrated by the old writers, because I carry it within myself and know what it is, and I do not wish to hide this fact. One must get used to speaking of one's virtues bravely to people's faces. The poem's called Vanichka. From bench to ditch, to station to train, then bench to ditch and back. The carriages swell and shudder, tremble in the dark. Vinyl seats, eyes stung by the ceiling lights. To lie, to sleep, with his boots hanging off the seat. Jars of liquor, clear or stained, and he hears the angels of the Lord. 1 gram of vodka per kilometer for the ticket inspector, more for the aching head, trembling heart. Spirits and furniture polish, potion of perfume, foot powder, beer, and varnish. Black windows wake to burning swallows, and soon roars of laughter, Koltsov or Akhmatova recited, swaying, a drink at every stumble of the tongue. What part of this is sickness, and what part the soul's design? Divine inspiration or delirium. Notebooks filled in concrete corners, fever, thrill, a shot for every page. All the while, woolen hats, the frigid streets, sometimes sleep beneath a grand piano, wrapped in his coat. I didn't have to imagine the hard floor, scarce heat. Reader, I admit it was his sorrow that first caught me. His eyes brimming and glassy, alone in a crowded room, head starting to swim and fall. Venya, I cannot hear the singer at the piano either. Venya, I feel cold in my coat. Yet somewhere the jasmine must be blooming. Somewhere the bird song won't stop. And very appropriately, after the bird song, the final poem I'm going to be reading for you, thank you so much for being here, is for one of my favorite creatures that has brought me so much joy since I've lived in Salt Lake City. I've gone to visit them frequently. This poem is called Love Letter as Southern Ground Hornbill. And this is a prompt I gave my students as well in class. So ideas for any of you teaching creative writing. Love Letter as Southern Ground Hornbill. It's true that we resemble the damned, or at least the creatures who might strip the lower circles of their rib meat, pick Prometheus to crimson mash. But we are not shame. We drink from the living, blink up intoxicating in challenge, as if to say, fight me, or at least get a good look at this bill, this cask, these lashes, our scarlet masks. Say it, thunderbird, hollower, carnivore, shredding snakes and rats. Honey, I would defend a territory of 40 square miles for you, shake the living dead and the dead from sleep, brush the blood most tenderly from your throat for this. Haunting croon, serpent song, twang in the throat and wrist. Darling, pick up your black cloak. Come a little closer. Not a poor version of something more beautiful, but fine as death itself. Sun-soaked ink, slow talons, a consummation devoutly to be wished. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. It was amazing. Congratulations again. Let's give them one more round of applause.